The sky above Zithra was full of golden clouds, floating islands that shimmered in the sunlight. Princess Lyra lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling. Her body was frail, her arms thin, her legs weak. She could barely walk without leaning on the carved railing of her chamber. But her mind was strong, sharp like a sword. She knew the politics around her, the schemes, and the power struggles that could destroy her family. Still, nothing had prepared her for what the Galactic Council had decided. Lyra's hands trembled slightly as her personal aide entered the room. "Princess," the aide said softly, "the Council's message has arrived. You are to marry the human, Captain Ethan Kane." Ellata's eyes widened. She sat up, her weak body protesting the movement. "A human?" she whispered. "That is not possible. He is primitive. We cannot. The Council has made its decision," the aide interrupted gently. "This is not negotiable. They say it is for the stability of Zithra and the galaxy. You must comply." Lyra pressed her hands to her face. She hated humans. They were strong, resourceful, and clever. But they lacked the elegance, the grace, the long line of history that Zithrans cherished. And now, one of them would enter her life, and she could not refuse. The journey to the Council's flagship was long. Lyra sat in the transport pod, her eyes fixed on the stars outside the window. She had been surrounded by wealth and comfort all her life, but now she felt trapped. The human, she thought, would be her constant shadow, and she would have to live under his eyes, pretending she agreed to this punishment. Captain Ethan Kane had been briefed on his mission. He was strong, disciplined, and polite. He had fought in many interstellar skirmishes, but nothing prepared him for being forced to marry an alien princess. To him it was strange, even unfair. But he understood his role. He was there to protect peace, not to argue with alien politics. Their first meeting was tense. Lyra entered the chamber, supported by her aides. Ethan bowed politely, trying not to make her uncomfortable. Lyra's eyes were sharp, almost angry. "So this is the human," she said softly, barely looking at him. "And you must be Princess Lyra," Ethan replied, keeping his tone gentle. "I am honored to meet you." Lyra turned away. "I do not share your enthusiasm," she said. Her voice was quiet but firm. Ethan nodded. He was patient. He had dealt with hostile commanders before. This was just another challenge. "I understand," he said. "I only wish to make your journey safe and comfortable." The journey continued. The pod shuddered as it passed through an asteroid field. Rogue ships, rebels who opposed the Council's decree, attacked them. Lyra's heart raced. She had never been in danger like this before. She had relied on servants and aides all her life. But now, she had no choice but to trust the human beside her. Ethan moved quickly, issuing commands, maneuvering the pod through the debris. He saved the pod from crashing into a floating rock, and then another ship fired lasers. He shielded Lyra, placing himself between her and the blast. Lyra's eyes widened as she watched him move with precision, courage, and calm. For the first time, Lyra felt a spark of admiration. The human was not simple. He was clever, brave, and capable. But she did not let herself smile. She still felt angry at the situation, at the Council, at the fate that forced her to marry him. When they finally arrived at the Council's flagship, the ceremony preparations began. Lyra was dressed in a gown of silver and soft blue, woven with threads from Zithra's rarest plants. She felt fragile, a delicate flower placed in the hands of someone who could crush her without realizing. Ethan stood beside her in ceremonial attire from Earth, looking formal and respectful. The wedding was quiet, but full of tension. The Council members watched closely. Lyra walked slowly down the aisle, leaning lightly on her aides, her eyes fixed on the ground. Ethan walked beside her, careful not to touch her without permission. The vows were spoken in formal language, and when it was done, they were officially married. Now came the night she dreaded the most. The bridal chamber was vast, filled with soft light and delicate decorations. Lyra's heart pounded. She had to spend the night with this human. She had no idea how to behave. She feared humiliation, loss of dignity, and the unknown that lay ahead, Ethan entered the chamber after her, closing the door gently. "Princess Lyra," he said softly, "I promise you safety, respect, and comfort tonight. Nothing more unless you wish it." Lyra looked at him, her eyes wary. He seemed honest. Perhaps he would not force her. But she could not trust easily. She nodded once, barely moving. Hours passed. They sat quietly, talking in low tones. Ethan asked about her world, her life on Zathira. Lyra spoke hesitantly at first, then slowly opened up. She told him of her studies, her favorite floating gardens, and her dreams that seemed impossible in her fragile body. Ethan listened, asking questions, showing genuine interest. Then came the medical emergency. Lyra felt a sudden weakness in her chest. Her vision blurred, and she fell to the floor. Ethan acted instantly. He used a combination of human medical techniques and some Zitharan remedies he had learned from studying her culture. He stabilized her, keeping her calm, speaking in soothing tones. Lyra felt warmth she had never felt from anyone. The human had saved her life, but he had also shown care and attention, as if she were more than a political pawn. She looked at him, amazed. Perhaps humans were not so simple after all. The night passed slowly. They talked, laughed quietly, and shared stories of their worlds. Lyra realized that despite differences in species, culture, and strength, they had shared values. They both wanted peace, wanted to help others, wanted to be respected for who they were. By dawn, Lyra felt different. She no longer felt completely weak. She had discovered courage inside herself, inspired by the human who had stayed by her side. She had begun to trust him, to see him not as a punishment, but as a friend. And maybe in time, she would see him as more. The story ends with them standing together on the balcony of the flagship. Looking at the rising suns of Zithara, Lyra breathed in deeply, feeling life and strength she had never known. Ethan stood beside her, proud of the trust they had begun to build. Together, they were ready to face the challenges of the galaxy. Side by side, this first part sets up the HFY theme clearly. Human courage, empathy, and ingenuity can inspire even the most elite and fragile alien societies. The bond of trust has begun, and the next part will explore how this relationship grows. Faces challenges and changes both Lyra and Ethan permanently. The morning suns of Zathera shone across the balcony as Princess Lyra stood beside Captain Ethan Kane. The soft wind from the floating islands brushed against her hair. For the first time in her life, she felt a mix of hope and courage. Her frailty had not disappeared, but something inside her had changed overnight. She no longer felt trapped by the Council's punishment. She felt seen, cared for, and understood. Ethan looked at her quietly, sensing the shift. He had expected hostility and resentment, but instead he saw a spark of life in Lyra's eyes. A fragile princess, yes, but one with a mind as sharp as any Zitharan scholar. He smiled softly. "You are braver than you know," he said. "Last night, you showed strength even when you were afraid." Lyra turned to him, a small smile forming on her lips. "I never thought that I could trust a human like this," she admitted. Her voice was soft but honest. "You saved me. You did not just protect my body, but something else, too. My thoughts, my fears, my dignity." Ethan bowed slightly. "That is all I ever wanted, Princess. To respect you, to keep you safe. Anything more will come only when you wish it." They spent the morning walking through the gardens of the flagship. Floating plants glowed gently with bioluminescence, even in the daylight, creating a serene, almost magical atmosphere. Lyra marveled at the mixture of human and alien technology in the garden. Ethan explained how humans had studied and integrated alien botany during their space expeditions. Lyra listened, intrigued, realizing that humans were clever, adaptable, thoughtful in ways she had underestimated. As they walked, the political tension surrounding their union began to fade in her mind. The Council's decision still weighed heavily, but she felt a new kind of strength and inner voice, telling her she could endure, even thrive in this situation. She began to see Ethan not as a punishment, but as a partner. Someone who could teach her about courage, life, and unexpected friendship. Suddenly, a warning alarm sounded in the flagship. Ethan's body tensed immediately. "Stay here," he said, voice calm but firm. "I will see what is happening." Lyra, though weak, followed him quickly. Her curiosity outweighed her fear. They arrived at the control deck, where several rogue ships had appeared near the outer orbit of Zethera. They were known rebels, opposed to the Galactic Council's policies. The flagship's defenses were ready, but the numbers were intimidating. Ethan quickly analyzed the situation. They are strong, but not clever. If we coordinate the defense, we can neutralize them without a full fight. Lyra watched as he moved among the officers, issuing precise orders, demonstrating strategies she had never seen in her life. He was human, yet his mind worked like a Zitharan tactician. Lyra felt awe. She realized that courage and intelligence were not bound by species. Humans, though physically different, had the strength of heart and mind that could change worlds. The rebel ships launched a volley of energy pulses. The flagship rocked, but the shields held. Ethan remained calm, guiding the crew. Lyra, standing beside him, felt an unfamiliar thrill. She realized that she was not just a spectator. Her presence mattered. The crew looked to her for signals, and she found herself issuing small but important decisions based on her knowledge of alien systems. She was contributing, not just hiding behind fear. After a tense battle, the rebels retreated. Ethan's calm leadership and Lyra's insight had turned a potentially disastrous encounter into a manageable one. Lyra could hardly believe it. She had thought herself weak, fragile, powerless, but now she had seen her own ability to act, to think, to influence outcomes. And it was thanks to Ethan's guidance and trust. Later, in the quiet of the observation deck, Lyra sat beside Ethan. "I never thought I would feel alive in this way," she said softly. "I was afraid, so afraid of being weak and failing. But last night and today, I feel different. I feel like I can breathe again." Ethan looked at her with respect. "You have always had strength, Princess. You only needed a moment and someone to trust, to see it. That is what we all need sometimes." Lyra nodded, feeling a warmth in her chest. She realized that humans were not just strong in body, but in spirit. They could teach, inspire, and protect in ways that went beyond physical strength. She began to feel a sense of equality and partnership with Ethan, a bond formed not by political necessity, but by shared experience and mutual respect. Days passed and the couple faced more challenges together. Missions, diplomatic meetings, and inspections required them to act as one. Lyra learned human ways of thinking, problem-solving, and diplomacy. Ethan, in turn, learned Zitharan culture, her subtle customs, and her delicate physical needs. Each day their respect and trust grew. One evening, the council summoned them to a grand chamber. "The galaxy watches this union closely," a counselor said. "Your cooperation, Princess Lyra and Captain Ethan, sets a precedent. Any sign of discord could bring unrest." Lyra felt pressure, but also a sense of pride. She realized she no longer feared being forced into marriage. Instead, she understood that this union could be powerful. She could influence events, protect her people, and work alongside Ethan as a team. She nodded confidently. "We understand," she said, her voice firm. "We will act with respect and care for the galaxy." Ethan stood beside her, placing a gentle hand near hers, not touching, just nearby. It was a silent gesture of support, a reminder that they were united. Lyra felt strength in that silent presence, a reminder that she was not alone. As weeks turned into months, their relationship transformed. What had begun as a forced, uncomfortable arrangement became a true partnership. Lyra found herself smiling more, thinking more clearly, and acting decisively. Ethan admired her courage, intelligence, and resilience. Together, they faced threats, solved crises, and inspired others on the flagship. One night, Lyra confided in Ethan privately. "I never imagined a human could change my life," she said. Not just by saving me physically, but by showing me what it means to trust, to act, and to be brave. Ethan smiled. I am glad, Princess. But you must know, it is not just humans who can inspire. You have taught me patience, humility, and understanding. We have learned from each other. Lyra felt a deep sense of connection. Their bond was no longer political. It was personal, emotional, and powerful. The frail princess had grown strong, not just in body, but in heart and mind. The human captain had proven that courage, empathy, and wisdom could come in any form. Finally, one morning, as the suns rose over Zithera, Lyra and Ethan stood on the balcony again. The light reflected off the floating islands, creating a serene golden glow. Lyra looked at Ethan, no longer afraid, no longer resentful. She saw him as a partner, a friend, and perhaps one day something more. Ethan looked at her and nodded. Whatever the galaxy brings, we face it together, he said. Lyra smiled, feeling warmth in her chest. Yes, she said softly. Together. The story closed on the two of them standing side by side, watching the world of Zithera unfold. Their bond, forged in fear, courage, and trust, had transformed not only their lives, but also the course of the galaxy. Lyra, once frail and afraid, now felt strong. Ethan, once uncertain, now knew the true power of human empathy and courage. The first night had changed everything, and the journey ahead promised challenges, but also hope, trust, and the promise of a partnership that could inspire all who looked to the stars.